Welcome back to the graveyard, everybody. My name is Mads, and happy World Goth Day, everyone. I hope everyone is celebrating in their own unique way this wonderful, spooky day of the year that's all about us and our subculture. How cool is that we even have a day like that? Obviously, as I'm sure you've already noticed, this video isn't quite as polished as my normal deep dives are because I just wanted to sit here for a few quick minutes today and discuss the positive things that the goth subculture has done for me, because a lot of us get really hung up with the negatives sometimes. Unfortunately, algorithms on places like YouTube and TikTok crave that stuff. Your videos tend to do better when you're being negative because it gets people talking about whatever you're discussing, and yeah, unfortunately, that kind of thing is heavily rewarded. And while I don't necessarily consider my brand deep dives fully negative, because I do discuss the good things they've done for the goth community as well and the alternative subculture as a whole, there's definitely things like controversies and stuff attached to them. So no super posed video. The backdrop, you can see the wall behind me and stuff. This is very relaxed. Think of this more like a FaceTime call between friends where I just walk you through the wonderful things the goth subculture has done for me. And I encourage all of you in the comments below to mention the positive outcome it's had on your own life as well. So first off, and on a very personal note, especially being that we're about to enter the month of June, there's a lot of queer people in the goth subculture. A lot of us. Obviously, not everyone, but I was pleasantly surprised to find that even in r/goth, the goth subreddit that I've brought up on my channel before in a past video, somebody asked how many people in that subreddit were LGBTQIA+, and a vast majority of people who responded actually were. Not only that, they mentioned the fact that apparently an adorable slang term for goth people who are queer is fruit bat. The second I told my fiance, she looked right at me and went, "Does that mean you're a fruit bat?" And I was like, "I guess I am." And I stim like this line. She was like, "Is that why you flap so much? Because you're a fruit bat?" And I was like, "Great, now every time I'm stimming like this, I'm going to remember that she called me a fruit bat." So that's adorable. That's a very positive thing. Apart from the fact that there's a community within another community that helps a lot of people understand who they are deep inside, there's a lot of allies. Even if people aren't necessarily part of the queer community, a lot of them are queer allies and will actually back people up. A lot of us are so used to being bullied by other people, belittled, treated like lesser just because we're a little bit different, that we don't want anyone else to feel exiled from the group. So the minute I've seen someone try to be homophobic, biphobic, transphobic, you name it, they get dogpiled by a bunch of other goths who are like, "Listen, this ain't the place for that. If you're gonna spread any kind of hate, take it somewhere else, because you should know more than better by being in this subculture that we're not okay with that shit. We want everyone to be treated like a human being here." How hard is that to understand? Not to mention, a lot of people flock toward the goth community already, not only because they love the music, but because they were outcasts in some capacity in their life. They weren't understood by the communities around them, so they latched onto this community that did understand what they're going through and wanted to make them feel like they were part of a family and part of a community, and they felt belonging. And then on top of that, if you're queer, you've got that twice as bad, where it's like, okay, already I'm an alternative person, so people are giving me the side eye just for the way I look and the music that I listen to. And now I'm LGBTQIA+. It's even more reason for most people to hate me. But then you find goths who are also queer, and they've created their own community on and offline, and it's beautiful because they're sitting here supporting each other through every aspect of their life that is difficult, and that other people, even if they are kind-hearted and empathetic, they can't understand it. Because that's the thing, like I've mentioned this before in past videos, people who are not queer or who are not goth can be kind and empathetic and treat us like human beings and like anybody else, even if we seem a little different to them, but they can never fully understand what it's like because they're never going to share those same lived experiences that we've had to go through. So it is absolutely beautiful seeing that two communities that struggle have come together to create a family in the goth subculture. Another positive aspect of the goth culture is that when I first moved here, I'm not originally from the state that I'm currently living in. When I first moved here, I literally only knew my aunt and uncle that are like 2.5 hours away from my house, and that was it. The only other person in this entire state that I knew personally is my fiance. I was leaving everything I knew behind. I didn't have family nearby. I didn't have any friends here. I didn't have a job here. I knew absolutely nothing about what I was getting into. And at the same time, I was deathly ill at the time. I was not doing well. It was really, really scary. And it's difficult to go through that alone. I was so terribly ill at the time, I couldn't even find work. I was working remotely for somebody when I was able to, but I was losing consciousness left and right, so I couldn't really be reliable as an employee. And to make up for the lack of money that we would get from a 2-income household, my fiance was working extra hours, so I was alone in the house most of the time with, again, nobody to really talk to because I can't drive for medical reasons, so I couldn't just go to like meet up someplace and find people like me. So I got on the internet, as you do, and I was listening to some of my goth playlists, and I was like, I wonder if there are a lot of goths on YouTube, because I'd watched YouTube for years, but I'd never put two and two together that there were probably goths there, because I was a MySpace kid, and I didn't have internet at my house. I had to wait until I was at a library after school to use it, so I got MySpace like a few times a week for maybe 1 to 2 hours, and that was all my internet access as a young person. So I go on YouTube, and to my pleasant surprise, there's not only a goth community on YouTube, but there's also some of them that are well known. Now, not nearly as large of channels as conventional people on YouTube, but for a subculture as niche as the goth subculture, it's really decent. The numbers some of these people pull, definitely in at least the low to high 6 digits. That's nothing to yawn about. And while there were some people that were kind of stirring the pot and causing issue, as there is in every community has really wonderful and amazing people who want to welcome newcomers and who want their community to thrive and continue to grow long after they're gone. There's also a few crappy people who are just like, no, it's my way or the highway. If you aren't exactly like me, you don't belong here. And it sucks, but those people don't have nearly the subscriber base as the more positive and kind-hearted ones. And what I loved was the people on goth YouTube who had the largest subscriber base, had full playlists just for baby bats. Something they heavily focused their channel on was if you are either new to the subculture entirely, or you were always part of it, but you never really found that sense of community. You were like the lone goth in your town or something. Here's a way to feel like you're part of a family. Here's my subscribers who are, gonna hang out and talk with you in a Discord or on Twitter or something. And it was wonderful. It was beautiful to see that they were trying to welcome people in and make them feel accepted and cared about, and especially the sheer amount of them that wanted to address specifically baby bats. And for anyone who doesn't know what that means, that's someone who's brand new to the subculture, knows almost nothing about goth, but wants to learn more. They would discuss different bands to listen to, different types of sounds, because goth music is not just one sound. Otherwise, it would just be one band we all followed. It's not. They would break down what each band did for the subculture, where people would find them performing, where you can listen to their music. It's wonderful. And even outside that, they're like, yes, it is a music-based subculture. Music is the most important part of it. You've got to enjoy goth music to be a goth. Otherwise, you're just darkly inclined or an alternative person in general. That's fair. That's fine. But they also explained we're not ignorant. We know that there's also an aesthetic. We know that if you are wandering around downtown and you're someone who looks like me or even more extreme than this, people are going to assume that you're a goth, because people who are not part of our subculture don't know that there's the terms alternative or darkly inclined. They just see someone that looks kind of vaguely spooky and go, that's a goth. And they explain that it's perfectly acceptable to lean into the aesthetic and to love the aesthetic. And there's multiple different goth aesthetics along with the love of the music. But to always remember to return to your roots. Make sure you understand that it's music-based first, but for goodness sakes, please show us your beautiful aesthetics. We will support you. We will applaud whatever amazing thing you want to do to express how you feel inside. Another really wonderful thing, and I think the last thing that I want to discuss in this video, because I don't want it to go on for too long, is what it's done for myself when I was mentally ill as a teenager and a young adult, and what it's done for a lot of other mentally ill people. It's very difficult for goth people to admit that they're mentally ill sometimes, because a lot of people have used that as a point of bullying us. They're just like, oh, well, these people only look like that because they're depressed. And like, I had the gross people running around making jokes about like, you must cut yourself and stuff. And I was like, explain to me like I'm stupid how that's funny, please. So it's hard when people use that as a way to hurt you, to acknowledge, yes, I actually do need help right now. I'm not okay, and that is okay. I'm not a bad person because I need help. I'm not a bad person because I'm mentally ill. It just is a part of me right now that I need to deal with. And the goth subculture really helped me. I have always been incredibly gifted in creative writing. I was writing poetry and prose at a very young age, so far above where my peers were that my teachers actually accused me on numerous occasions of having my parents write for me, and they would have to come in and say, listen, we don't know how to write, we suck at it, that is all just our kid. And I'd have to prove it to them by like writing something out in front of them, and they were like, oh, you're just good at this, huh? I had a professor in college in an advanced poetry course who absolutely loved me because he could throw any form of poetry at me and be like, do this in half an hour, and I could do it. And the thing is, that is a great creative outlet when you're depressed or anxious or feeling any kind of deep negative emotion on a regular basis, getting it out artistically if you can. Even if you're not good at it, it doesn't matter. It's not like anyone's going to see it. It's for you. It's art for art's sake. If you suck at poetry, write it anyway. If you suck at short stories, write it anyway for yourself. Draw stick figures, whatever it takes to get it out of your system so that you have an outlet that doesn't cause you harm. And a lot of people in the goth subculture are very artsy people, very crafty people, because back when the subculture first began, there was no Hot Topic, there was no Killstar, there was nothing like that. Everything had to be DIY'd by hand, which means that either you had to be an artsy or a crafty person, or you had to know somebody who was artsy and crafty, or you were not going to match the aesthetic of your peers. So it's really cool because instead of having people look at me funny and be like, this poem looks really dark and grim and it's like about death and stuff, something's wrong with this person. In the goth subculture, if I was suffering a loss and I missed someone in my life who had passed away, and I wrote this long, sad ballad about the pit they left in me, people in the goth subculture don't look at me funny. They don't look at me like, oh, we need to like get this person 150 immediately. They don't see it as this scary, ugly thing that you shouldn't talk about. Death is beautiful in the goth subculture. Creating art around death is beautiful in the goth subculture, because ask anyone who's been goth for any longer length of time and we will all tell you the same thing, that one of the wonderful things about us and darkly inclined people in general is that we love to find the beauty in things that most people think are scary and shouldn't be spoken about. We find the beauty in death. We find the beauty in struggle. And I think that's an amazing thing because I was able to finally share my art with people who understood that this isn't a bad thing. It's actually good that I'm writing this. It's helping me get through something really hard right now that I need to get through, and I don't have the tools to get through otherwise. And that helped me realize that's what I wanted as a career. I wanted to write and draw and create beautiful art that helped other people through their own mental health struggles. And without the goth community, I may not have ever reached that point in my life because they appreciated what I was creating. And that it's not scary or evil or bad just because there's a skull involved. It's amazing. And even outside the artsy, crafty aspect of it, just the fact that death in general is not a taboo subject and it's not scary, it's embraced, it's beautiful, it's another gorgeous part of life. And it's okay to feel sad when someone dies or something dies. That's absolutely normal part of the human experience. But it's also okay to say, well, you know, if this person lost their pet parrot and the best way for them to get through that sense of mourning is to decorate its skull with flowers and gemstones and black paint and gold paint, that's beautiful. Not only do they have a piece of that beloved feathered friend for the rest of their lives, so there's a little less of a sense of loss then, they've also created something beautiful out of that loss. Not everyone likes taxidermy, and that's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to like wet or dry specimens, that's fine. But some people do, and it really, really helps them. And even just talking about it. So many of our songs surround things like death. So much of our art surrounds things like death. And again, it's beautiful and not scary at all. And I think that's amazing, and I wish more of the world could be like that. That's all I've got for today. I hope that this was an uplifting World Goth Day video for all of you. I hope you have a wonderful day yourselves. Until next time, do something that makes you a happy little fruit bat. As long as you're hurting no one else in the process. And I'll see all of you again soon. Goodbye for now.